So you, but George, excuse me.
Been admiring your facility.
Approval of the minutes for the June 6th, 2023 and July 11th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meetings. Are there any changes or updates?
I did not see any. No.
Okay, make a motion.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the Committee of the Whole of June 6, 2023 and the Committee of the Whole July 11th, 2023.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilwoman Cotter and a second by Councilwoman Turner. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. And then we have one discussion item on the agenda for tonight. So it's a UAM's presentation on the current status of the small modular reactors, or SMR. And we have Mr. Rich Walgie, perfect, here presenting. He is the Carbon Free Power Project Senior VP of Business Development.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So your time is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you. I think we will start with one item. Jackie Coombs is going to talk a little bit about the resource planning that UAMPS is doing for all its members.
So I delegated to you, Greg, to pitch down, and then I'll come up. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come and give an update on UAMPS and where we're standing in our project development, as well as move into our carbon-free power project. So UAMPS has been doing a lot of resource development, and as you know, rates have increased for electricity across, not only Utah, but across the nation. And we're going to be developing resources for probably up to 15 years. Resource development right now is very complex, and I can step through these, but it can take 3 to 5 years to even develop a project, and that's not addressing transmission issues and being able to interconnect it and bring the energy to where you need it is definitely a different issue above and beyond project development. So we do have our Red Mesa project. It did come in November of 2022. We entered into that with the Navajo Nation, NTUA. It's 66 megawatts. But this project increased in cost as well as it was delayed almost 6 months from beginning, mainly due to supply chain issues. And so we're seeing price impact on almost every project that we're investigating. Still Solar is also delayed about 6 months. We're still in negotiations currently with that. Looks like that COD date will even be pushed farther. Has to do with supply chain issues, with panels being manufactured in China and the complexity of bringing them across. Zion Solar, and we need to have batteries associated with our solar. We will be investigating putting batteries at our Still Solar site just so that we can be able to store the energy so that we can take it when we need it. We're also working on geothermal. Geothermal, as you know, Murray belongs to the Hunter plant, which is experiencing coal issues, ozone issues, as well as, Pacific Corp saying that they're going to close it down. We thought it would be 2032, and they're targeting now 2026 to 2027. So we definitely need 24-hour-a-day power. Long-term geothermal also provides us that. One reason why we're studying it. We did send an RFP out, and we will be investigating with one developer and moving that project forward at 85 megawatts. We do have a Horse Butte Wind project. We are looking at expanding that. When we originally developed it, it was 57 megawatts, but we did the site for 99. So we're looking at expanding it or moving it to either repowering or expanding it up to the 100 to plus megawatts. We are looking at additional natural gas. As you know, natural gas is easy. We can follow our load with it. It can be on and off quickly, but it does still have a carbon footprint, which we're concerned about. If we put in any natural gas, it will have to be amortized over 10 years because of the new regulations associated with fossil fuel. We're looking at a waste heat project. That is a short term. It's a project outside of Price. It's an existing plant. They're looking for an off-taker for that, but it will only be a 7-year contract. So you can see we're doing a lot of things. We're also doing an integrated resource plan. A lot of the city council will be joining us at our member conference in a couple of weeks. We have our consultants who will go totally over our integrated resource plan. What resources the UAMPS as a footprint should be pursuing, what best fits our needs, and we'll go in more depth in what they're recommending. Resource adequacy is very important. We have to have resources to cover our load or we'll be penalized, and we're trying to integrate the entire Western grid. So a lot of things going on, but, we also are doing our carbon-free power project. And with all of the projects that we're looking at, we believe that our carbon-free power project is really the best long-term solution for our membership. And that's the project that Rich is heading up to do business development. I know Murray's aware of the project, but we'd like to give you an update on where we're at in the project, and we'll turn the time over to Rich.
Thank you.
I live it.
Thank you, Jackie. A little bit of background about me. I was the CEO of Rocky Mountain Power from 2006 to 2016. Part of the reason I'm involved in this project is I was on the original advisory board in the kickoff meeting in Idaho Falls in 2015, and we foresaw the need eventually to have a carbon-free 24 hours a day resource. And as you may know, Pacific Corp has put a small modular reactor in Kemmerer in their plans to deal with all the issues that Jackie just laid out. And it's the same for everybody in the industry. The world's changing dramatically. I think most of us who have experience operating a system think we're going to need something that we can turn on and off as we need 24 hours a day. Can't just rely on intermittent, somewhat unpredictable energy. Can't stack enough batteries. So Mason Baker, CEO of UAMPS, approached me and asked if I would help out on this project, and I agreed. So the project is set up as an independent business. It's an LLC. It's wholly owned today by UAMPS. And it was established really to deliver carbon-free power. That's the objective, and it's in the name. The project is located in Idaho Falls. It includes 6 small modular reactors. We'll get into what that really means and what they look like in a bit. It's sited at the Idaho National Laboratory. It's the nation's #1 nuclear reactor study and analysis and research lab in the United States. It's where all of the nuclear Navy reactors have been created and tested out. So we're right amongst a bunch of reactors. Lots of people used to having the reactors. Workforce is available. Right now, the current participants are all UAMPS members. And I think you're very familiar with the project, having been in it at one time. My job is to find other participants other than just UAMPS members. So that's what I've been focusing on. And we are making some progress, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit. Just to remind you the project characteristics, or if you're just seeing it for the first time, the economic life of the project, we're calculating of 40 years only because that's the duration of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission license that you can initially get on a nuclear reactor project. However, they have extended the life from a permitting perspective for 20 years, and nearly all of the major nuclear reactor plants still in operation. This is a 77 megawatt design for each of the units, so that adds up to 462 megawatts of output from the project. You see 50 up there because that was something that the original design was made to, but they found out that the reactors actually have more capability, so we've upgraded them to 77. We just submitted the application to get that design approved, and one of the things the Department of Energy has done in the federal government to try to encourage nuclear reactor development, the small modular reactors, not the ones that we currently use today, that provide about 20% of the energy in America. Still 20% of our electricity comes from nuclear power plants. They are one of the things that UAMPS was able to do. They received $1.4 billion of cost share support for the project. And the UAMPS was able to negotiate to get that money primarily in the front end of the process where the permitting was a little bit more of the uncertainty. And so they have recently, Congress authorized that $1.4 billion. So that in essence has now been set aside over the next 3 years. We will spend about $400 million up to this point, and then there's another $1 billion that has been allocated and authorized. Right now, the project is intended to come online with the very first one of the 6 modules in December of 2029. That has been the delivery date for the last 2 years, which is in and of itself a little rare for any big industrial project, but particularly nuclear projects. And then we'll bring on the remaining 5 modules sequentially over the remainder of 2030. By the end of 2030, we'll be at 462 megawatts of output. So this is a picture of a module, and it's a little misleading because that picture, some of you have been to Corvallis and seen the top third of that design. It actually is 90 feet tall. So when they talk about small reactors, it's not really small. It's small in the context of the big nuclear projects. And one of the advantages of this technology, it really is a resizing of technology that's already used throughout the country and the world. So the doctor who envisioned this downsizing, and the primary reasons being, one, you can manufacture these in a facility rather than on site by piece, and I'll be able to show you some of the consequences of that. Also, you can size them differently. So NewScale, who is the provider of this technology, has a 4-module design, a 6-module design, and a 12-module design. So depending upon the utility they're working with or the customer, they can size the project. It has a very high capacity factor, meaning it'll run 95% of the time. And to put that into perspective, a coal plant is considerably lower than that, as is a natural gas plant, because these projects aren't like a coal plant where every once in a while you have to do a major and minor overhaul. So if you have a coal crusher, in order to crush the coal, in order to feed it into the boiler, those need to be rebuilt every 4 or 5 years, and they're expensive, time consuming. You don't have similar moving parts in the reactor. It can move up and down, so if you have a great deal of renewable energy and you want to follow the load versus the variability of the renewable resource, you could do that. One of the things the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the Western Energy Electric Coordinating Council insist on, if you run a utility, that you have resource adequacy. That means you have enough resource and enough backup resource that if you lose part of your generation portfolio, you can keep the lights on. And most of that done today is done by projects that you can dispatch. People don't try to figure out whether a solar project is going to be there for that adequacy. In California, it's not accepted. So if you need to have some sort of energy that'll run 24 hours a day, we think this is the best one primarily because it is non-emitting and it will be useful in that regulatory context in the lifetime of the project. One of the other things about all of the new reactors have a different safety mindset and design. So one of the things about the NewScale technology is if something happens, the line to the plant trips off, or there's some alarm goes off and says, hey, we should turn these reactors off, the operators don't do anything. It's all programmed in. So you're not expecting them to have to go pull a lever, turn on a pump, turn something off. The other thing is you don't need to have additional water. As I'll show you, these modules are underwater, so they're in a big cooling pool. And so even if you turn the power off to the project, which most projects you can't, it will continue to run. Yes?
So how much water is required if you don't need it to cool down because it's already in water?
That is a very good question. I'll get you the answer because I don't know what the gallons are in the original pool. Do you have that? Jackie's heading for
No, I
her notes. But we'll get that to you. I haven't had that question asked, but I think it's going to be a lot. It's bigger than.
And then
Well, there's 200 gallons of kind of makeup.
So that we went to dry cooling, so we don't use it to cool anymore, and that's say 95% of the water usage. So we'll be dry cooled. We don't have water towers. So and the reason we did that is because we outweighed the cost of the water versus acquiring the water rights, and we believe that it's the environmental right thing to do is to dry cool.
but it still requires water.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it will still use disposable water for the facility, and the pool doesn't get filled all the time. It stays stagnant. Once it's filled, they'll lose a little bit, but it stays unless they have to cool it. So unless they had a disaster, the pool acts like a sink and it will cool the reactors. But it's not being utilized all the time. It's just, they'll have to.
Whereas before it was,
Yeah.
is that correct?
No, it was the cooling towers that
Oh.
cooled the steam that was
Yeah,
using the water.
that's what-
But the pool stays constant unless you have to use it to cool the reactors in case of an emergency.
Okay. Yeah, it just says no water, so that's, to me that.
So when Fukushima happened, they had to have water, all the big things, they needed water to cool the reactor. This one does not need additional water to cool it. So what happens is the rods go into their safety position, And then the water will actually cool the reactor itself. And only over 30 days, then it will cool, so it won't, burn itself up like they did in Fukushima. That's what that means, no additional water.
So as an engineer, let me answer the question the way I was thinking about it. You're filling up a swimming pool. I don't know how many gallons of water that is. That's the question we will answer, because it's big. It's thousands, tens of thousands of gallons. But as Jackie described, it isn't used up. The loss will be through evaporation, basically. So you'll have to put some more water in the reservoir to keep it topped off. But then the other water's used to cool off basically the turbines that are creating the electricity. And as Jackie said, the original design was to use water cooling, and that was traditionally what was used in all thermal plants because they're more efficient when they're water cooled because of the Rankine cycle and a bunch of other stuff. But water is so dear in the West, and we've had these droughts, we concluded that the movement is to air cooled, which doesn't require near as much water, but occasionally you do have to refresh those waters because it's a little consumable. So that'll be measured in a couple hundred gallons a minute, which seems like a lot, but for a project this size. So Jackie kind of jumped in front of one of my project slides, but I won't have to touch on now. That's okay. He's done this more than I have. I just, I got my mojo going on.
Sorry.
Anyway, so this is a picture, a drawing of what the project will look like. And there's 2 or 3 things here that are quite surprising to me. It's a 462 megawatt design, and Jackie just went over the air-cooled condensers. And usually when you use air versus water cooling for these thermodynamic plants, you take a big efficiency hit. But one of the offsets to the efficiency of the equipment itself is that the air cooling fans are less expensive than the investment you have to make for the water cooling process. So in the end, it's about a wash as far as cost goes. Each module will have its own steam generator and electric generator, and so that we can take one of the modules out of service to refuel it, and the rest of the plant will operate. And that's different than the big projects. And so that's another advantage of these small modular reactors put together in packages. The spent fuel storage is right outside the building, so it never leaves the site. It doesn't have to be transported anywhere. And so that is the technology that's currently used now all over the world, that kind of storage capability. One of the other thing that's interested me somewhat, because we're on the lab site, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has said for emergency planning, you only have to worry about what's inside that fence line. So generally in the past, when you did emergency plans, you basically had to take a protractor out 10 miles, draw a circle, and then you had to have a plan for all of that for an emergency. That is now contained within the fence line, and it's only 65 acres. So 65 acres would give you about 65 megawatt, give you less than 65 megawatts of solar, considerably less. So it's about 5 acres a megawatt for a solar project. So very efficient use of land and water. I talked a little bit about the spent fuel storage. The Department of Energy has the responsibility to ultimately deal with the energy out of the spent fuel containers. Right now, they have set money aside to do that. There was a plan to put them all in one location at Yucca Mountain in Nevada. That plan didn't come to fruition. So right now, the spent fuel is stored at each reactor site, either some of them underwater or some of them using this technology. So there has yet, to my knowledge, been an accident about moving those casks around, but they don't move very often. because they're not being centralized anywhere. They're still residing where they were used. So this project is the farthest along of any small modular reactor project in the country. It got an earlier start. It has a little easier technology to manage. The company that we're working with, NewScale, who is the OEM, original equipment provider, focused a lot and primarily on how do they get the permits to do these projects, because one of the big delay factors is how long it takes in order to get all of the permits required to run the plant. And understandably so, people are worried about safety issues, security issues, environmental effects. So the NRC has a very thorough licensing approach. NewScale started early and did a lot of outreach to the nuclear regulatory regulators. They didn't just say, here's our application, what do you think? They spent years developing relationships and communications channels. So one of the successes of this project is that they were able to get approval for that emergency planning zone, that first standard design, the first in the nation. We have just put in the review of the SDA for the 77 size megawatt. It was announced today, actually. And one of the other things we're doing to manage the risk of the project is to put in a limited work authorization. And what that allows us to do is do some of the site preparation and some of the site testing in advance of really spending the money to construct the project. Now, one of the requirements, if we get that and something happens with the project, you have to undo all of that, but that will help us take several months out of the overall
Would that be on site or?
on site. So wherever,
So not
because this reservoir is just going to be sunk into the ground. It's going to be gigantic. So, but you can do like site preparation, make some roads, a few other things around the site. But until you get the final license, you can't really afford to take the risk to really start buying things, digging big holes. So it's very important. One of the changes in the industry is it used to be, if you wanted to do a nuclear power plant, you got your design approved. After that was approved, you'd start building, and then there was another license you needed, which was to operate. And the design and the operating licenses weren't done in a coordinated fashion. So one of the big challenges in the nuclear industry is you'd build your project or get started on the project, and then the commission would come and say, yeah, wait a minute, but I want it to be rotated 15 degrees. I mean, that's kind of a simple example, but it's actually a real example. So now you make an application both for your design and your operations. It's called a combined operating license. And we are in the process of putting that together. We expect to submit that in 2024, and it will take a year for the NRC to look at that application and say, yes, we agree, you've met the conditions and the requirements to get a license. And then we expect to have that issued in 2026. Done in 2026, we're expecting about 3.5 years to build everything to the point we can install that first module in the end of 2029. So one of the other things that the project has done is it actually has taken some of that money that the Department of Energy has provided for cost share, and we have gone to Korea, the only place in the world where this kind of work can be done. It's the only foundry left on the planet that can actually pour the steel into these forms and then forge it into the container for these reactors. And this is a picture of the first one of the reactor tops in the Doosan factory in South Korea, where they're actually starting to do the work on that first reactor vessel. So one of the big challenges of the project, straight up, is that it's expensive. It's more expensive than most of the resources any of us have dealt with in the recent past, except replacement power for Hunter 2 on the market, which we compete with. So whenever people say, well, yeah, but I could just do a solar project and I wouldn't have to deal with this. Well, the fact is, prices are going up. This initially will be more expensive than nearly every other option, perhaps all of them, but eventually over 40 years, and this is how the industry's always worked, you wind up the resources that come on afterward are as or more expensive than this. So when you make this commitment, you really are thinking into the future decade or two. You're not doing it because you want the lights to be on tomorrow. You need to have something that you can rely on predictably for a long period of time. So this is the revised budget plan of finance. So I'm not going to go into too much detail of this, but if you're considering your participation one way or the other in the project, you'll want to have deep knowledge of these numbers, because these are the numbers that resulted from something called the Project Cost Estimate 3. And that was the estimate that was done in 2022. And it was a shock because the cost of the project went up considerably. And it had to do with supply chain. We just had a little supply chain, primarily in inflation and borrowing costs, but that isn't all of it. So the project, when it's all said and done, before our rebates, if you want to call them that, it's going to be $9.3 billion. Billion, yeah, it's that's big. That's a big number. You're almost getting into federal government numbers, except you'd put a T in there instead of trillions. So it's $9 billion. Now, the good news is that is before we get the cost share from the federal government, and then that number turns out to be 7.9 plus billion. And then the Inflation Reduction Act had some other incentives to do the project, and that takes the amount down to 5.126 billion. And that's based on some assumptions. That's this cost estimate, that's the PCE 3, which just means it's an interim cost estimate. Now we're doing PCE 2, which needs to be much more detailed, higher level of confidence that the numbers have been tested out with suppliers and financiers. This does include the connection of the plant to the transmission grid. It does not include any costs that have to be added to the grid to boost its capability to take the 462 megawatts. Right now, for Utahns, we'll be connecting to Pacific Corp's system at the Antelope substation. One of the things UAMPS was very good at was negotiating a transmission agreement with Pacific Corp that allows them to take energy from resources that connect to Pacific Corp's system and deliver them anywhere on UAMP's system. So the incremental cost won't be there for UAMPS members in Utah specifically. So that's an advantage to this project. And one of the challenges we have, the Inflation Reduction Act would allow us to get a 50% tax offset, but there are requirements in there for domestic content. In other words, that the energy and the equipment, the raw materials have to come from domestic sources. As I pointed out, there's only one place on the planet that can do the pouring and forging. We are working with the DOE and Congress to say, well, I think you've sort of put an inherent problem in here that nobody can solve. And I just had a meeting with somebody from South Korea today. We had a conversation about that particular issue, and they also confirmed, and they don't work for Doosan, but they're from South Korea. It is, in fact, the only place where this kind of work can be done. Oh, yes. Throw your water bottle out. I don't pay it.
Could do that.
Well,
So is Pacific Corp now going to be involved with the project? Are they providing any funding, or is it just?
another great question. Pacific Corp has decided to go with a competing technology called the Natrium technology, and it's a technology that Berkshire Hathaway is invested in, and it's a technology that's been ironically developing kind of simultaneously in the same place in Oregon that this technology was. So they're committed to that technology. We, of course, have spoken to them, and I'll speak to them again and say, well, look, you're going to do one of these eventually. Why don't you take some of this project now? Because I think my opinion is we're probably ahead of them a little bit as far as being able to generate electricity. But it's something we keep working with them on. But they, I think, have a commitment to that technology. Now, their integrated resource plan that Jackie was talking about has one of these small modular reactors in it. Recently, they just updated it and said we probably need to put in 2 or 3 more to counteract the effects on the grid of shutting down all the coal plants in the West. So if you're in the business, you know you need to have that kind of resource from time to time. And about the only one that's readily available today, if I want to say 6 years from now, it's readily available, is this kind of technology. People say, well, just build a few more dams, we'll get more hydro, but they're talking about taking 4 of the dams off the Snake River. There is, well, why don't you just take water from this reservoir, pump it up the hill when you have extra energy, let it generate electricity when it runs back down, but you can't get people to let you build the reservoirs, so if you don't have the reservoir. People talk about a lot of batteries. Well, you could stack batteries up about the size of this building and it handle a 24-hour load for Murray. It's just, so there's constraints, economic and electric constraints that I think this has to be one of the solutions, not all of them, but one of them. So the challenge for me personally is this was set up by the existing members of UAMPS that are still involved in the project. And they said, hey, this price went up. This is a real big project. We're not, let's face it, they as an entity, those entities aren't going to be able to deliver this. They're not into funding technology for others. Not only that, there's limitations on how much municipal debt-free bonding you can do. So they've said if you can't bring the cost down from what it is today, which is about 105 to 89, we have something called the Tiger Team to review that PCE 3, look at the PCE 2, and bring that cost estimate down. So what'll happen, they'll take that cost estimate, they'll run it through the model that says this is what the levelized cost of energy, which is basically what is the cost of the electricity that comes out of the plant into the grid. Then we aren't going to remain in the project. The other requirement they have is they don't want to be, even if they hit that target for dollars, they also then said, well, we don't want to be the only ones in this. You need to have 80% of the capacity of the project under contract at the time we have to make this decision, which is in November. We aren't going to go forward with the project. So why that's a challenge for me is I'm trying to get that 80%. And so people want to know, well, how likely is that? Well, all I can say is we're in enough discussions with people who are doing now serious due diligence that if that all happens, I mean, that's like it all, there is a chance that we will get people who have, interest that would get us to 80%. But then the challenge is they want power purchase agreements. They don't necessarily want to be owners like the UAMPS members now. Well, in order to do that, we need to recruit private equity or investment dollars from other sources. And as I mentioned, I just met with a private equity company today. And so those private equity investors are going to want to see that these agreements we're trying to get in place are strong enough that they feel like it's low enough risk, and it's not going to be zero risk for sure, that they're willing to go ahead and provide the funding for these PPAs. So we're balancing, we're kind of walking a tightrope here between how do we get enough indication from people who are really interested to convince investors that the project can be a reality. And so that's really to me, the biggest challenge for what I'm trying to do is find that what I'll call it, an agreement that's a commitment, but it has a lot of precedent conditions. So you have to hit, well, two for sure, we have to hit the 28. I've level set that number wrong from the first day I went to work. I wish it was 28, because then I'd just be handing you a contract and signing up. 89 and 80, then they will have, each individual entity will have its own requirements. They're called conditions precedent in the agreement, so that they're not obligated to sign if we haven't hit all of the things they want us to do. So that's right now the challenge. So I will say,
How many members do we have within you?
So how many are participating? 27,
27, and how many do we have total?
50 members in UMass.
Okay.
so candidly,
Yeah.
some of the counting I'm doing towards hitting that 80% includes some UAMPS members. I'm here to sell, so I'm not going to do anything, I'm not going to say anything more than that. I mean, you guys have the responsibility, the obligation to your constituents. You have to make the decisions you think are right. That is part of the way to get us to the 80%. I will say, most of the conversations I've had, of course, the price is a big issue, but they also don't want to be the only ones. So if we could get an anchor tenant, if you will, it's a developer speak, like if you're doing a mall, I think we're going to see some other people get in. But in order to try and hit the 80%, we're talking to investor-owned utilities, except for Pacific Rocky Mountain Power. We are talking to other entities, such as Deseret Power, UMPA, other utilities in Utah, certainly covering the waterfront in the Bonneville Power administration footprint. And I would say that primarily the people I've talked to have not just said, we're not doing nuclear because it really is about, well, can we afford it? What are the constraints? How do you manage your risks? All of the things that are associated in some ways with any big project. So that's why I think the potential is there, but it's going to be pretty tough to hit. So next slide. Questions? I am sorry that I just droned on, but you know.
Here's some questions.
Jackie, $89. What is the projected 2020 cost? Do you have any idea?
We will present that as a 2030 cost when we come back with that number, but it is, so right now, using 2022 dollars, the number's over 100, about 105, so we need to bring it down, so something north of that probably.
And how does that compare with with other sources?
Well, the market's 100. You guys are paying that now to replace,
Or
more to replace Hunter. If I were to walk down the street to the local solar developer, he'll tell you that he can do it for $30, and that's probably pretty close. An offshore wind farm, $60. Another gas plant will be sort of around that number, 89. If you put solar with the battery, it's going to be in the 60-ish range. And that's most of the time when you hear somebody talk about a solar with the battery, they're not talking about having a battery big enough to run for 24 hours. They basically just size the batteries to meet the peak that happens in the afternoon when everybody turns on their air conditioner. So when you read about these solar battery combinations, it's a little misleading in that they're not storing enough electricity to run all night.
But in 2030.
Well, in 2030, my sense is they will be higher, and there are studies by a company called Lazard that put the range into the 80s and 90s years out. But it's one of the challenges you have, nobody ever really shows you their contract of what their pricing really is. They do press releases and say, this is how much it costs, unless you're you guys can, because you're a public entity, you have to disclose, but you don't necessarily have to disclose every bit of your commercial transaction. So it's kind of hard to get. Here's another way I'd answer your question, because I don't feel qualified to start projecting numbers for things I'm not working on. But here's another way to think about it. So when we built the first wind farm in America, Pacific Corp did up in Wyoming, along with the Emerald County PUD in Oregon. The cost of the wind was a couple hundred. The first solar projects we put in place were a couple hundred. And so the industry's matured. But just like anything, the best sites have already been taken. So here's one of the things I'd say. Savvy solar developers have found every spot in the Pacific Corp system where there's land, there's decent solar, and there's some transmission capacity available where no capacity has to be built. It's just human nature. That's what we did, the utility. So just from that fact alone, the total cost, which you'll never see, which is, well, we had to make a transmission investment, we had to put in some batteries. So it's kind of hard to just pick out the energy as a standalone, but I'm rambling on now, so I apologize for that. The way I think about it is this: when we first put those wind turbines in our first solar projects, they were supposed to last 10 plus years, 20 plus years. They last about 10. And so, well, that's I don't want to get in that discussion because emotions really charged. You can. I will just, if I agree, I'll nod. But the thing that I wanted to say is, because they don't actually last more than let's say 10 or 15 years. Sometimes they're changed out, just as Jackie was saying, because the new turbine, if you can put it in the same location, you get a little more energy out, and you still have all the other infrastructure around you. But the fact is, the University of Utah, there's a course called the Industrial Engineering 301. And one of the things they trained you to do is you have to put everything on the same time horizon when you're thinking about cost. So if this is a 60-year project, you only have to make that huge capital investment once in 60 years. Well, if you try to replace that output with, I'll just use solar panels, every 10 years, you're going to have to make a capital investment to replace those panels because they deteriorate over time, they get new technologies, etc. So if you were really comparing the actual, to me, economic life comparison, you don't just say, this is what it would cost me today. How much is this site going to cost me over 60 years? And then I think this project competes on price. But if it's just today's incremental price that you can get from somebody developing a good site, we're not going to get anywhere near that ever. So just be honest about it.
So we're at time now, and we have back-to-back this evening. So any other questions that we may have for the team, we probably just need to submit over, and then we can get responses from those, because we got to get to RDA here. So with that, I appreciate you all being here, and thank you so much for the presentation. And if there's no action.
Yes.
Seeing there's nothing else, we are adjourned, and we will start RDA at 6:20.
So,
Thank you, sir.
yes. Any questions that you come up with, I'm going to get back to you. Now I'm interested. Just tell me what you're
Figure it out.
calculator when you get home.
It's
Yeah. Aaron, you speak again today?
No.
You need something.
Well, you know, the thing is, I started in the industry as a lineman, so I used to have different seat than this. So I was like, yeah, I hear you, but it's under me. Yeah, so it's just part of the process. Well, the only good thing I see about it is all my friends are my age. You never have to worry about having a discussion topic. So now I've got to the point, it's like, okay, let's do the medical report first. Then we can start talking about fishing. It is
Only
pathetic.
62 and I'm speaking. Yeah.
Well, you have to outlaw medical.
So that's the next story.
Right. Goes down because it's 80%. So that's, but we need you guys to sign so we can. So- We'll see.
This is the project we talked about.
Thanks.
EPA is been key.
Not solving all the problems. Don't cost. It's not. In fact, they're in California. Plans. Thinking they're gonna replace some.
Those last that you said, I used to be able to say when I first got to them,
Like
we literally had the lowest average rates in the areas. Wyoming was number 2.
It is now 6:25 on Tuesday, August 1st. And so let's get started. First thing, we have citizen comments. And let's see, public comments can be made in person during the meeting or may be submitted by sending an email, including your name and address, to rda@murray.utah.gov. All comments this evening are limited to 3 minutes or less, and email comments will be read into the meeting record. Okay, first off is citizen comments. Phil, do we have any email? Where's Phil?
He's right there.
Oh, there you are. Oh, my goodness. You should be in the front. Are there any email comments? Great, thank you. Okay, now we will again open it to citizen comments from those citizens who are present. Okay. Oh. Yes.
Hi, Clark.
Turned off.
You turned it off.
And your time is up.
District 3, that's a short question. I was just wondering if
We
we know
need-
the timeline of when we're gonna find out more about the old city hall property.
Oh, I won't touch it. Sorry. I know. I just turn up the volume. The timeline of when we're going to hear out more about the old city hall project, what project was selected. Just excited to find out more.
Thank you. And what was your name?
Yeah.
Did you say it?
The mayor wants to answer that.
If you want.
So Clark, and everyone else, we're working on that. We've involved the RDA chair and vice chair. We don't have a vice chair right this second, and Phil's department. And I'm thinking, here, maybe I'll wait till GL comes in here and then I'll ask him the question. But I'll tell you in just a minute because we're close. We're about 2 weeks out. That's what I wanted to say, but I want to make sure that I really knew what I was talking about, that we're 2 weeks out. Because there's always something going on that could hinder a little bit. But I'd say 2 to 3 weeks. Thank you.
We're on our way. Thank you. Okay, do we have any other questions from the audience? Okay, seeing none, we'll continue on with our business item, which is the election of the RDA vice chair. And that will be for District 1. Well, District 1 is, I know. Anyway, so it's for the RDA chair. We need to have, since Phil left us, we need to replace him, which is very, very difficult to do. But anyway, so I will open nominations for the RDA vice chair.
Madam Chair, I'll make a nomination that I nominate Pam Cotter to be the RDA Vice Chair.
I will second that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. Brooke, would you take the roll?
Ms. Cotter.
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez.
Aye.
Ms. Turner.
Aye.
Mr. Harekesi.
Aye.
Okay, Pam, you are our new vice chair.
Thank you. It will be fun.
And with that, we will close the RDA meeting and go to the city council meeting. Since it is now 6:30, August 1st, 2023. So this is the meeting for the Murray City Municipal Council. Let's see, the public may view the council meeting via the live stream at www.murraycitylive.com or on Facebook. Those wishing to have their comments read into the record may send an email by 5 p.m. the day prior to the meeting date at citycouncil.murray.utah.gov. First off, we will have this opening ceremonies, and I'd just like to welcome everyone. And if you have phones, would you please turn them off or put them to silent? I would appreciate that. Also, we have present Brooke, the mayor, GL, Councilmember Pam Cotter, Councilmember Rosalba Dominguez, myself, Diane Turner, and Councilmember Gary Harekesi. So we'll continue on with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Wendy Parsons Baker, and she has said she would be happy to do that. Wendy, would you come and lead us? Oh. All right, here's Wendy.
Everyone, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Wendy. All right. The next is approval of minutes. And we have one set of minutes for the council meeting on June 27th, 2023. Are there any corrections or changes?
None that I saw.
None.
Okay, great. Then I would appreciate a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for the council meeting of June 27, 2023.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
All right. Has been motioned and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. We are now at the special recognition portion of our agenda, and that what we have tonight is the Murray City Employee of the Month, who is Eric Bracewell. He's a metering technician for the power department, and Greg Bellon, sorry Greg, myself and Mayor Hales will be presenting. Okay, do you want to go down to the...
Where's your mic, Mayor?
It's Mr. Mike.
They kept calling me, I'm a fan, they kept calling me Phil Donahue.
Oh, it's right there.
I was thinking of something like a Spanish show.
It's dazzle it.
Oh, it is. Oh, there you go.
There we go, we're on. They accused me a couple weeks ago of being like Phil Donahue because I was walking through the audience and I'm going like, really? Couldn't have said someone else? But anyway. All right, it's yours.
Okay, Eric, would you please come up and join us? Welcome. Eric started his career as an arborist in 2005. In 2012, he became an apprentice line worker and then spent 4 years as a line worker. He later wanted to try his hand in the metering division. He just finished his apprenticeship, passed the test, and is a metering technician. Congratulations. Eric loves learning and putting his knowledge to work to better the power department. He is willing and always has a smile, always willing to help. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We've been doing this for how many years now, Mayor? I bet it's even more than that, maybe 11. And Mayor Hales was the one who started this, and it's a wonderful recognition of our employees, and we really do appreciate all the service that you provide to Murray. And what you get, well, I'll let the mayor, I'll give that to you, and you can give that to him. So, anyway.
Thank you. So, 18 years, as Diane said, that's a long time. Thanks for being here. Were you with someone else before or?
Not a city, I was with Aspen.
Okay. In Hawaii? Oh, man, let me tell you. Oahu?
Yep.
Beautiful place, beautiful place. So anyway, we started the program, as Diane said, quite a few years ago, recognized our phenomenal employees. And so we've got a $50 gift card for you. And that probably goes to someone in that right down there. But I see some family members. Oh, dinner's on Dad tonight. That's cool. You might have to go to McDonald's, but that's okay. Anyway, and then we'll hand you over your certificate. And then we will have, Jennifer, where are they going to go, the names?
We're still working on that.
We're still okay. Somewhere your name will be printed, like somewhere like that on the wall. And we've got quite a few on there now, don't we? So we've got a lot. So when we figure that out, what's that? Oh, when we figure it out, we'll have those up. And but just. And Greg will come up and say a few things, but just from the council and the administration, we want to tell you how much we appreciate all you do. You get a lot of compliments from your coworkers, from people that are even working with you that I've heard that work here at City Hall. And then Greg and Matt have spoken very highly of you. So just want to congratulate you. And again, Greg will say some things right now, but we just want to give you a round of applause for all you do for our city. Thank you.
Well, so I actually knew Eric back before I got here. He was tree trimming at a utility that I was working at. So we go back a ways. But I just want to give you a little context in his accomplishments here at Murray. An apprenticeship is 4 years. So he got 4 years in the lineman area, and then he did 3 years, and he was able to test out of 1 year of his metering because we gave him some credit for being a journeyman line worker. And so that's 7, but I'm going to call it 8 years of combined experience or combined learning. So that's like 2 bachelor's degrees right there. So to me, that's impressive. And the fact that he wanted to come back and start another apprenticeship. He loves metering. Eric, he likes it. He's a thinker and he's a doer. He's hardworking, dedicated, and above all, he's someone I can trust. And so I really appreciate Eric and all that he does. He's constantly asking, "Hey, what can I do to help you?" And in the arena that we're in right now, that means a lot because we're still trying to get a lot accomplished in our department. So, but Eric is just he's got his family's here. So I'm going to make you introduce your family, but. His wife, Loasa, but I'm going to have him introduce the rest.
Okay, yeah. My wife, Loasa, we've been married for 29 years. We'll be 30 years next year. And then my youngest is Sina. Next to her is the next in line is Junior. He's named after me. And then It's my son Lau. And then my oldest daughter, she's a counselor at Hunter High School, and it's volleyball tryouts, so she also coaches volleyball, so she has tryouts tonight, so she couldn't make it, but, yeah, I just want to thank Greg for everything, for all the help, and thanks for the consideration of Employee of the Month, and appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Eric, you, you and your family may leave, or you can spend the rest of your evening watching us. But if I were you, I'd go celebrate, so.
It's a quick meeting.
I would stay.
Thank you so much, Eric, and thank you, family, for supporting him these last 4 years. We're really proud that you're here at Murray. So thank you.
Thanks. So nice. Okay, now we're at the citizen comments portion. And comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Step to the microphone, state your name and city of residence, and fill out the required form. So we're open for citizen comments.
19 years in this room. I think this is the first time I've come up here. I am Jim Brass. I'm the resident of Murray. And after a lot of deliberation the last 2 days, I just wanted to let you know that, and it's probably the worst kept secret now, I'm withdrawing from the election. It is a personal health issue that I actually got information on yesterday, so that'll leave only 5 of you now. So. And I do wish everybody luck. I love this city. This, as I said, this was a tough decision, but better for my family, better for me. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
I won't touch it this time. I'm Clark Bullen still live in District 3. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate that the city is doing the downtown committee, a steering committee, I want to say it's called, and that it shows that the city is taking the time and doing the right things to get this project right, and notices how important this block is in the center of the city, in the center of the valley, and what a cool opportunity we have to make a great project right here close to our new city hall. Anyway, I really appreciate these extra efforts to make sure that we know what the citizens want, and that we have these 2 open houses coming up. I believe the date has changed to August 14th for the first one. I imagine you'll talk more about that later, but I just hope we get a lot of participation and a lot of feedback so we can say for sure we know what the citizens want, and I think that's the right way to do things, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll continue on. We are now with the consent agenda, which is to consider confirmation of the mayor's appointment of Kim Martinez to the Arts Advisory Board for a partial term from now until January 15th, 2024. Mayor Hales is presenting.
Thank you, Diane. Kim, will you stand up for us, please? Do you know how hard it is for me to say Kim Martinez and not Kat Martinez? We had a Kat Martinez who served on our council, left us a few months ago, and I'm not kidding you. I kept saying, don't say Kat, don't say. Now, if any of you, hopefully, I believe all of you have read Kim's resume, you'll find out that we are dang lucky to get Kim. She is absolutely amazing. She's overqualified. She just has so many things that will bless Murray City. Lori, good job on the pick. And we just are excited. I mean, Kim, you were a delight and you're fun to be around. You just bring a lot of sunshine Really, you do. And I know that a lot of people have told you that because it's obviously obvious. Anyway, so thank you, and we are looking forward, if the council will confirm you tonight, we're just psyched to have you on board with us. So without further ado, we will ask for consideration of our confirmation of the appointment of Kim Martinez to the Arts Advisory Board for a partial term from now until January 15th, 2024. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for being interested. All right, I will take a motion.
I will make a motion to consider a confirmation of the mayor's appointment of Kim Martinez to the Arts Advisory Board for a partial term from now until January 15th, 2024.
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Cotter and a second by Councilmember Dominguez. Is there any discussion on the motion?
No.
No.
All right, would you please call the roll, Brooke?
Ms. Cotter?
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez?
Aye.
Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Harekesi?
Aye.
Okay,
All right, welcome
It
aboard,
is-
Kim. We're excited to have you, and you're going to be awesome. Thank you.
thank
Yeah,
you
I'm
so
really
much.
excited.
All right. Okay, consent calendar. We have no public hearings. We have two business items. The first one is to consider a resolution approving the mayor's appointment of Elvin Farrell to the NeighborWorks Salt Lake Board, a community development corporation. Mayor Hales is presenting.
Thanks again, Diane. And by the way, I don't know if my hearing's gotten better or if the mics and the systems, because I can hear everything today. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
So whatever you guys did,
Something's different.
Yeah.
Rob, everyone,
Yeah.
thank you, because it's working great. Elvon, will you stand for us? Elvon has been with the city for 2 months. You thought I was going to say years, okay. 2 months, and, yeah, keep standing, you gotta keep standing, you got a block away, NeighborWorks way, so anyway. We are excited, Elvon is a great employee, he works with Phil in our CED, Community Economic Department, and we're happy to present the name Elvon Farrell to serve, just a minute, excuse me, appointment of Elvon Farrell to the NeighborWorks Salt Lake Board, a community development corporation. And let me just tell you, he'll be phenomenal. So thanks for being here, Elvon, and if we get that confirmation, we'll get you moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will take a motion.
I'll make a motion. Where are we? I'm lost. Oh, there we go. Of approving the mayor's appointment of Elvon Farrell to the NeighborWorks Salt Lake Board, a community development corporation.
I will second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Cotter and a second by Councilmember Harekesi. Would you please take the roll? Thank you,
Cotter.
Brooke.
Yeah. Ms. Cotter?
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez?
Aye.
Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Harekesi?
Aye.
All right, it has been approved. Thank you.
He's on his way. Put him to work, Phil.
You've been working hard for the last.
Thank you.
All right, now we are at our last business item, which is the election of a city council vice chair, and consider a resolution appointing the vice chair for the Murray City Council for the remainder of calendar year 2023. Gary Harekesi will be presenting. Gary?
Thank you, Diane. So with the resignation of Councilmember Phil Markham and joining the Community and Economic Development group, we have to appoint a new vice chair, and so that is what our purpose is here tonight. So with that, we will open the nominations for the vice chair appointment.
I would like to nominate Councilmember Rosalba Dominguez.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a first and a second for Councilwoman Dominguez. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, we will take the roll.
Ms. Cotter?
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez?
Aye.
Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Harekesi?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. Congratulations. All right, now we're at the mayor's report and questions for the mayor from the council.
Thank you. I'm just going to take a quick moment, and I usually don't throw out a name, but I'm going to do that. Clark, thanks for coming up and sharing that. I mean, really, when you came up, and I know the council appreciates this, because we work hard on this, and when we put those two meetings together, pure accidental, but we had people that were making accusations that we did it on purpose or to not have as many people come. The second we heard about it, Phil said, let's change it, let's get it going. So to acknowledge that, because we know there are others that don't, so thank you for acknowledging that and for your positive comments. We hear them all, so we appreciate that very much, and I know that comes from all the council.
Yep.
So we appreciate it. That's all I have. If you have any other questions, we had a little incident at the pool a couple days ago that we had to shut it down for a day.
Oh.
Just some stuff going on.
Bio?
Yes, thank you. It's back up, clear, good,
good.
it's going, we're up and running, so.
All clear.
Yeah, it's all clear. Anyway, and
Very
we've getting the kinks worked out of the building, so it's really, things are going well. We met with Jennifer today, Kennedy, on some things that we want to get fixed in your council office, and we're sailing, so we're moving forward, and we have Jeff and Rob have and their departments have tons of requests for things to be able to be fixed, and that's common when you have a new building. So the new building has just been, really, every time I walk into it, it's almost like I walk into a new place, meaning new to me every day, because it's exciting to be here, and it's a beautiful building, and hats off to Doug and everyone that was involved with it. And anyway, so that's all I have. Any questions for me?
Mayor, I don't have a question, I just have a comment, but I wanted to speak to, I've been out knocking doors now for the last several weeks, and the consistent feedback is how incredible our employees are in public works, in recreation, the police and fire, and just everyone all around is super complimentary of everything in Murray, and people have not met one person that's like, I cannot wait to move from Murray. It is literally, everyone's like, I've been here forever and I plan to stay forever. And so just want to call that out and tell everyone, thank you so much.
Thank you, that's awesome, we appreciate that.
And I had a citizen call me, and she said, what happened to the utility mailbox that was by the post office? Well, I had just received your letter on the computer, and I remember what I read, that the city had moved it over on the south side, and I said, are you in your car? She goes, yes. I said, just drive to the new city hall, I'll stay on the phone.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, I'm on the north side. I said, come over to the south side, and I said, look, it's right there, Oh, I see it. So thank you for putting that in the newsletter. Because
Absolutely.
citizens didn't realize it had moved from the post office over to here. And thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? All right. Good to see you all, and we are adjourned.